Hi there and welcome. Let us start with 1 minute of silence. Thank you. Welcome to the series Conversations with a Yogi. And this must be the fourth one. And I feel we are learning every time the basics of who we are and how we can navigate through the spiritual journey with easiness. And we truly are very fortunate now to navigate on the shoulders of angels, taking benefit from what others have learned in many decades of meditation and spiritual study. So these conversations have brought a lot of light from experienced meditators who are sharing from the heart, and they can make our journey easier and enjoyable. Today, two such meditators, Aldous, based in Holland, will be in conversation with Viggo Simonsen, based in Denmark. And Viggo is a very old friend of ours, and these talks are on the Romanian channel. So Viggo has been to Romania many times. He initiated service in Romania, and it's a great pleasure always to be in your company and to hear your words of wisdom. So I will hand it over to Aldous, and thank you both of you in advance.
Hello, good evening, good afternoon, good morning from wherever you are listening to the recording. And hello to Viggo as well. Good to have you with us.
Thank you.
Just as a short introduction to this series, these are some questions that I came across myself a while back, and I found them interesting because they made me think deeper about myself, my aim in life, and my understanding of life. And then I thought, what a good idea to share them with other fellow yogis and see what wisdom we can harvest from these questions. And the first question we go to start with, and feel free to answer them as you like, is you have been quite a while on this journey, on the spiritual journey, I think a few decades, right?
Yeah, nearly 40 years.
Nearly 40 years. I've been on a spiritual journey 20 years, and I feel like I've just started, even though that's not true. What has life taught you so far?
Well, I mean, life for me has mostly been my spiritual life because I started at the age of 21. So my life has, in many ways, been a bit unusual um, compared to other people. I mean, even my youth, my 20s, I was fully engaged in my spiritual efforts and meditation. So it means also that a lot of the normal youth experiences that people go through, I didn't really. Um, it was really not part of my life or my experience. So I would say my main learnings have been through the
Sag mal, ich habe eine Frage und zwar, bist du eigentlich ein kleiner dummer Nigger?
my main learnings have been through the study and through meditation. Um, and if I should summarize it somehow, then I would say that the really the main goal for me, and I think for most of us, and also in a certain indirect sense for all other people, is to attain what we call liberation in life. And it's we have a special term for it, Jivan Mukti Hindi, but it means the same, liberation in life. And it very much coins the whole aim and objective of our spiritual effort. It's not everything, but it's maybe 80% of what we are aiming for. And it's a very vast um, area which contains a lot of different aspects. But it's really the liberation from any sort of internal pain or suffering. Most of a lot of our pain and suffering is self-inflicted. That comes from simply, you know, bad conditioning that we have to break out of, and that is really the objective of meditation. Meditation is not just a practice for the moment; it's a practice that will completely change our future. It will transform us. Um, and that transformation from living a life in bondage with all sorts of bondages and dependencies and sufferings, some internal, some play out in our relationships with others, um, or in our consumption of things, and all of that has to be transformed into liberation in life. And that is a state in which we can say we are really truly free. I mean, we often talk about man has a free will, right? But that free will is quite, in practice, quite theoretic, because most people are conditioned and confined and limited by their habits and their tendencies, their entire past, in essence. All their choices, all their actions in their past has conditioned them. So we are not really free. No one is really free to act um, sovereignly, except for those that have achieved that liberation in life. Because at that point, you have no inhibitions. You have nothing that is blocking you. You can actually apply your entire creative resources, and you can shape your life as you want. And that is where you can say you start really unfolding the full potential of yourself and of life. And to me, that is really what it's all about. And it's a freedom of, from worry, from fear, from eventually your ego, which is probably, the highest achievement within that effort to get rid of your ego. And
Nice, nice. Sorry to interrupt you because
sure.
there is a lot in what you're
Sure.
saying. And something that I would translate liberation in life with, because I can imagine that for people who have not a spiritual background, it might still sound a bit abstract or a bit weird term, liberation in life. Would it be the same for you as being completely happy whilst alive and in life? Is that another way to say that?
Yeah, happiness, I would say, is the result of that. I mean, that follows as the consequence of this liberation. You will be happy, sure.
And liberation as in freedom, freedom from what you were just sharing, freedom from fear, freedom from weaknesses, ego, pain, suffering,
Anything.
discontentment, all kind of ranges and colors that can be there.
Yeah, the list is very, very long. And
yeah.
And the reason why we call it liberation in life, it's because there's also this other term, liberation from life. So this in many spiritual traditions, this has been the aim to, like in Buddhism, for instance, to completely transcend, leave the whole embodiment and of being incarnated, and then transcend into a realm of non-existence almost. I mean, where you just are in constant peace and inactivity. But this is really a state of nothingness. It's not really something that carries any value in itself. It's a what's the word? Not a lack, but it's you avoid any sort of suffering, definitely, but you also avoid any form of happiness and any form of enjoyment. So the whole purpose of life for us is really to reach that state of liberation in life, where we feel liberated and um, and living a life and having relationships at the same time, not renouncing that.
Yeah, nice also how you make the distinction, like liberation is basically the aim, as you have understood life so far in your own journey. And as I can see it, because everyone wants freedom some way or the other, we want to be free. But then there is a distinction between liberation or freedom in life and freedom from life. One is being fully present and embodied and in a body literally, but not being influenced by anyone or anything happening around you. And the other is in a state of complete silence and non-activeness. As I said, well, nice to start it so far. And so on this point and matter, do you think, if we continue with our series of questions, do you think that you mentioned just now these two type of liberation? Do you believe that we all have a destiny in life, and is destiny the same, or do you see yourself here on earth to fulfill it? Is there some kind of destiny?
You mean
for
destiny,
all of us?
Destiny or destination?
Destiny.
Destiny. Okay. Destiny is very personal, because it's really that is the product of your entire past, according to our understanding of karma. So whatever you have done in your past has shaped your current destiny, and whatever you do now will shape your future destiny. So we all have different destinies, and we can. The main thing here is that we can shape our destiny. It's completely and 100% within our hands, in our control. Um, Not saying that it's trivial or easy, but it is in principle completely in our control. Um, so very much related to the liberation in life, there is also the term perfection, and perfection is that it's also a bit strange term, because what does it mean for people? Mostly perfection, it's something to do with their ideals. They have some sort of image of the perfect life, but it's so often very superficial and related to aesthetics and so on. For us, and in a spiritual context, perfection really means that state where I do not cause any living being sorrow anymore. I don't cause any sorrow to myself, self-inflicted wounds. I don't accept any sorrow from others. I mean, I'm not influenced negatively by others. So, and I am completely balanced between all aspects. I'm not sort of biased or skew in any way. I'm completely balanced. I am mastering all the skills and competences of life, and um, that is a perfectly achievable thing. And and once I achieve that perfection in life, then I can shape my destiny as I want. There's nothing that will happen by accident in my life. Nothing will come as a surprise. Everything will be according to the you can say perfect karma. Um, so that is it sounds very utopian and very idealistic for most people, but when we understand how karma works, it makes complete sense. And the ramifications of having, a whole community of people in that state of being, and um, you know basing a civilization on those premises is quite far reaching. I mean, that will completely change our world.
Yeah, you mentioned quite a big topic, karma,
Hmm.
and how that is shaping the destiny in a way. The destiny is not something that's out there and I have to achieve it in a way, but it's something that's actually laid out for me and for everyone individually, um, on the basis of what has happened before or in the past. Could you elaborate a bit more on karma? What's your concept um, of karma in terms of cause and effect? How do you understand the concept of karma in terms of cause and effect?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can only really describe the principles on a very high level, abstract level, because karma practical in its practicality is really every single particular action by any human being, and the consequence it has. And those consequences are not always obvious. It's not like a one-to-one relationship. Um, Whatever destiny or outcome I'm experiencing in my life may be a result of a lot of different inputs in the past, not just one action, but many. And those actions also include, my thoughts and my mindset, and so karma is also very much taking place on a mental level. And and one particular action may have a multitude of effects, and some will show up sooner and some later, and it's terribly complex. But the main principle is really that destiny is caused by action, and is caused by my own actions, and I cannot blame anyone, however much it seems to be other people's faults. I can never blame my destiny, or blame anyone for my destiny. My destiny is shaped by my own actions, of which, of course, most of them are forgotten. They belong to previous lifetimes. So I have no idea what I have done and how it has impacted my destiny. But we don't know. We don't need to understand all the details. We just need to understand the principle, and then, of course, it's very much a question of faith. You cannot you A lot of the spiritual topics cannot really be argued. They are eventually a question of faith, and they are paradigms. You can choose to believe in them or not. But once you have that awareness of karma, you start to see that starts to make a lot of sense, and you start to observe certain connections in your life. So
Yeah, and nice also to highlight that the destiny, my destiny or our destiny, each one's destiny is individual, and it is caused or created by our own actions, and the actions also being thoughts, not necessarily what I do with my mouth, hands, and feet. And that destiny, as you were saying earlier on, that it can be reshaped and reformed, and whatever is reshaped and reformed has its own fruit at the end of the road. And to have trust in that, as you're saying, to have a trust that everything that is been thrown out, whether positive or negative, will eventually has its fruit. The seed is planted, and eventually it will grow to a tree. It might not be tomorrow, but it might be the day after tomorrow, after that. I just wanted to ask you something on something you said before on this point of how perfection is actually being nonviolent, not giving sorrow, not taking sorrow, which is easier said often than done. Maybe not giving sorrow is very easy, but not taking sorrow can be a habit that we have been doing for a while. And even maybe giving sorrow can be a habit that we have created somewhere along the line. On that note, what is your moral code in relation to right and wrong? How do you know when you're giving sorrow and when you're not giving sorrow, for example? How do you know what is good and what is bad?
yeah, that's a very good question. I think first of all, I think it's a kind of intuition. It's a sense that we are equipped with every human being, but it can be more or less evolved and refined. And when we first start on our spiritual path, it's very gross. And then as we progress, we start seeing new aspects that we were completely blind to before, and we then refine our sense of right and wrong. And but I think the most important thing, because you can easily have a sort of a quite alert conscience after you have acted, but it's not really warning you before you act, and you sort of deceive yourself again and again. So what is really important is that sort of conscience is promoted or elevated to a kind of principle and value system in your life that you uh, that you let yourself be directed by. I mean, I'm a strong believer in the importance of value systems and principles, that they should really be governing everything we do in life. We shouldn't do things unconsciously or driven by some sort of habit or impulse. Everything should be we should be conscious about everything we do, and it should be um, directed by our value systems. That's the only way we can have a guarantee for consistency in our life. If our actions and decisions and responses are just based on impulses or feelings or emotions, then it can go anywhere. I mean, one day we may feel fine and we intuitively do the right thing. Next day we are a bit low, and then we do all the wrong things. So the art here is to be able to follow a system that is consistent and that you understand and that you believe in, and even when you don't feel like doing it, when you feel it's a bit of a pain to follow it, you still have to do it. That's sign of spiritual maturity, that you can do that, because following your most basic instincts. I mean, even a child can do that. Even an animal can do that. We are, naturally all able to do that. But that's not a spiritual achievement in any way.
Yeah, I was just hearing this morning someone talking about the difference between intuition and conscience, um, and how conscience is your intellect at play, and how your intuition is your mind and your feelings at play, and how intuition can mislead you in a way, as you're also saying, if you're running after emotions, impulses, or opinions. Today it might work well for me, but tomorrow I might be totally wrong because whatever reason. This value system that you're talking about, yeah, how are these values created? Is everyone having the same value system? Because if so, the world wouldn't have been the way it is now, right? And how are they created? And do you have an example of it?
Certainly not. Certainly not that everyone agrees on value systems. That's why we have conflicts in this world. It's basically clashes between value systems, uh, whether they are religious or political or any other way. But uh, I think there are some general value systems that we can agree on as a community or within a religion and so on, but they are they are mostly codified, in some laws or in the scriptures, etc. But I think what is much more important is my personal value systems, which go on top of those others, and because once I make them personal, I take ownership of them, and then I'm more inclined to follow them, um, regardless of circumstances. Regardless whether I'm being watched or monitored or controlled or not. It's uh, anything that I follow out of pressure or expectation is not uh, likely going to become a stable guideline in my life, and certainly not beyond this life. The powerful thing about value systems is that once I embody them, uh, and especially backed up with the power of meditation, they will go very deeply within me, and they will actually, speaking of karma, they will form the basis of my next incarnation and many incarnations down the road.
Could
So
you give an example of a value or value system? What is it that you're referring to? Do you have a personal example? What could that be?
yeah, it can be small things like um, that I always keep to my word. I will never find excuses. I will never say decline or refuse to do something because I feel a bit lazy, or I don't have confidence in myself, or I have some fears, um, or I think it's really someone else's duty to do it, or and if I have promised to do something, I will not sort of find an excuse to avoid it. Or it's a little thing, but if I if it's important to me, to honor those principles, I will certainly value them in other people, and I will also be more inclined to follow them myself. So anything that is dear to me, which I've to me, it has a lot to do with dignity. You know, if that is how I define dignity of a human being, to embody certain value systems, then I have the sorry, the best motivation to follow them. And um, and I believe that they will go very deep within us. It's not just a question of one lifetime. We will they will become part of that intuition in the future, because intuition is basically something that comes from some deep strata in us that we don't know how it came there in the first place. We don't really know where it comes from, but it just emerges. But it comes from somewhere. It comes from some realization, some effort in the past that I did and then forgot about, but I'm still being sustained by it.
So then you're talking about the pure intuition, because intuition can also be very mixed sometimes,
Yes,
right?
yes, exactly. Intuition, for a spiritual person, intuition is it's a kind of a sediment. It's like all my wisdom and all my realization, all my experiences. Once it settles, it becomes like a part of my subconsciousness, and I don't really need to rationalize or think or consider so much when I am faced with a choice or I have to act. My intuition will come, and I will know exactly, because sometimes we have to act very, very quickly, and uh, and then we sometimes get confused, because we cannot process a situation as fast as we should, and then the intuition will immediately tell me what is the right thing, and if that intuition is sort of like a sharp sword, I will always I will always it will always tell me the right thing. It's never that the intuition tells me one thing, I follow it, and then I afterwards realize that this was completely wrong. I shouldn't have done that. Like it was a bad advice. There will be complete alignment, between truth and intuition.
Yeah, nice. If it is pure, then that alignment is there. If it's pure, it's clear. It's kind of like a clarity that comes from within. And as you were talking about this value system, I've become to understand them as universal values, such as honesty, accountability, respect, regard, kindness, transparency. The list is ongoing. And I think what you're referring to, and correct me if I'm wrong, is how to put those values, that innate values that we all have in one way or the other, how to put them into practice, how to make them mine, and how to um, let my life be led by them rather than my life being led by whatever is happening outside of me or whatever um, is happening inside of me. Is that what you were referring to as well when you gave that example?
I think there are some universal values, but there are certainly also a lot that are cultural, and that is those are the contentious ones, those that cause conflicts between cultures. Um, and the yeah, I would say the those that we are mostly preoccupied with are those that have a more like a universal um, character. Because if you take the common denominator between all religions, and all their teachings, then you have a pretty good, I think, indication of which are the universal values. And I mean, I don't know of any religion that doesn't preach compassion or kindness or generosity, and so all of those are definitely safe, you know. But but again, those are the kind of the bread and butter of values. But then on top of that, we have our individual take, and I think those are um, in a way more interesting, because these are really an expression of my um, my preferences. I mean, how do I want to be as a human being? What is really valuable for me? You know, quite generally, there is a kind of schisma or a internal conflict in human beings between their value systems, whatever they are, and their practice, their life, their actions. Because one thing is to know what you should be doing, but the other is to have the power to actually do it, to follow it through. And it's like it reflects the basic, you can say, dichotomy or duality of spiritual life. We need two legs to walk on. We need all the cognitive part of understanding of, you know, self-realization, wisdom, all of that which comes in under that umbrella. But then we also need the spiritual power to implement it, because otherwise it becomes a perpetual inner conflict. You know, I have these, and you see that in all religions. People, they know what they should be doing according to the scriptures and teachings, and their life is completely different. They are failing time and again because they don't have the spiritual power to follow it. It takes spiritual power. It takes a spiritual surplus to be able to embody goodness. You know. It's that's how it works. So, but again, having that power in its by itself is not enough. We need both. You know, if power that is not backed up by wisdom and value systems can become misused and become dangerous. So, so those two are like our two legs. You know, they are both necessary. We cannot.
Yeah, and very recognizable what you're saying. Knowing itself is not enough, but it is definitely a beginning to start the journey and to see what is going on. And I like the question that you asked as a way to find one's own value system, because I can imagine people listening to this and thinking like, what is my value system? And the question of how do I want to be as a human being? What is valuable for me is a good entry point to start with. And then you were saying power is needed, and power is also a big topic. Where do I get the power from? What is meant by power, and so on and so forth. But for now, what is your concept of God? Another big topic, but maybe you would like to. What's your understanding and concept of God?
my my concept of God is that I mean, okay, I should probably start with my concept of myself, because they are so much connected, those two questions. So my concept of myself is that I'm a spiritual being. I have no physical attributes. Um, all the physical attributes are connected with my body, and the body is really just a costume, you know, sophisticated costume that I take birth in, and I live my whole life in this costume, but it's still just a costume. It's not me. It's not. It has no intelligence. It has no life of its own. So the soul is the one that imbues, you know, life and intelligence in this body. So that's what I am, and that soul is completely invisible and has no, you know, form or shape. It's we say it's point like, you know, just like a spark of spiritual light, and really sorry, the understanding of God is very similar. That God is a soul, so God has exactly the same attributes, and the main difference is that God then never takes a human body, never incarnates. So that is what makes that soul special. So that soul is always beyond life. And this also, as a consequence, makes this soul immutable. It never changes. It's constant. As opposed to everyone else. I mean, because of karma, as we spoke about before, we do change over time and we do degrade. Um, so God is that source that stays back and with whom we can connect. That is what we call meditation. And then once we connect with that supreme source, we can gain spiritual power. So that power is achieved, is gained in that way. And what does it consist of? It consists of the essential attributes of the soul, which are common between us and God: love, peace, purity, and and others. This is the fuel of the soul. This is, I mean, without those, human life becomes a struggle and a really a very miserable affair. I mean, it's those powers that makes life valuable and enjoyable. If we don't have peace in mind, if we don't have happiness, if we are instead influenced by a lot of bad habits and vices, it will just degrade our life. And so that is the real valuable investment to achieve spiritual power. And we call it purification because it in a way that the effect of that power is that it eliminates all the adverse effects of bad karma throughout our past, which has accumulated and made the soul heavy over time. That is that is cancelled. It's nullified by the accumulation of spiritual power. So God's role and importance in life is absolutely essential.
Yeah, God being the seed of a tree, you can say. And the powers that you were speaking about are spiritual powers, are intrinsic powers, is inner strength in a way, filled with peace and universal love or altruistic love. And that is the fuel for any human being to thrive, you can say. And when we are not having it from the source, we will take it from others or from other sources. So in a way, we all are connected with God in one way or the other, whether we know him or not, because we need that power. Is that what you were saying as well?
Yeah. But people are very different, and there are it's always it's always in every culture, in any civilization, it's a minority of people who have that urge or that longing for a relationship with God. It's not the majority, but still, what God can offer us is universal. It's something everyone needs. So, in a way, as you say, if you don't have that connection with that source, then you will try to substitute, because every single human being has an intrinsic need of peace of mind and love and recognition and respect uh, and our whole life is about pursuing those things. And on an entirely trivial and mundane level, and then you have extreme cases where people are completely void and completely depleted of those, and then it becomes conditions, like mental conditions. People get almost crazy, if they cannot, for instance, if they cannot achieve any peace of mind, there is just no quietness in the mind, and it becomes unbearable. It becomes like, then you try um, to find some sort of escape from that through substances and whatnot, medication. And so it just, these extreme cases just show us that, there's a spectrum, and if you are at the one end of the spectrum, you are really struggling for mental survival. Most people will be somewhere in the middle, and we, throughout life, we can move back and forth, and there will be different periods of our life where we are we are in a good state, and others when we are in a bad state. And then at the other extreme, at the other end, you have that perfection I mentioned before, and that is perfectly um, possible to reach such a state, but it doesn't come without any effort. You really have to make effort. You have to be very, you know, very both ambitious, spiritually ambitious, and you also need to know exactly, understand your goal, and then you have to move towards that goal, driven by your value systems and your vision here. And then it is doable. It's doable. Um, that is a sort of divine perfection, which is possible. It requires my own effort and my own investment, but it also requires a connection with that supreme source. It cannot be done on our own, but also it cannot be done, by God, uh, without our cooperation, without our interest. It's both both are needed.
Yeah, it's an interdependent relationship. I feel that I could go on and on on the answers that you're giving, and this conversation could take a bit longer, but the time is there, like with everything. And I think it's a good moment to have a taste, to have a proof of what you've been sharing with us so far, in a form of a meditation. And the question is, how do you find peace within yourself? Could you bring us into an experience of that for 3 minutes or so?
Mm-hmm. So in its most simplest form, all I need to do is sit with my eyes slightly open and find an object in front of me which I can rest my eyes. And then I pull back my focus away from that object and inside to the point between my eyes, my third eye, where the soul, resides. This is my throne, this body, my seat. The first step of meditation is to return to that awareness of being a peaceful and a pure soul, regardless of whatever I think I am, whatever I have accumulated throughout many lives. That is my essence, peace, love, security, contentment. And in this state, I am completely detached from the world. I'm just such a being.
Thank you, Viggo. Thank you for being with us and all the good wishes.